The stories keep changing and the anger keeps growing. New York Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, he'll join us on the latest when it comes to the Porter domestic abuse controversy and also the lack of security clearances for a bunch of White House staffers. Then a busy day in D.C. that as President Trump rolls out his infrastructure plan and both sides try to make a deal when it comes to DACA. But is a clean vote even possible to protect the dreamers from deportation? Also, we're going to take a look ahead to the midterm elections in November and which Republicans in our region could be in trouble. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you for joining me this Monday evening. And we start tonight with continuing fallout from the Rob Porter story. He is, of course, the former White House staff secretary who resigned after allegations surfaced that two ex-wives have accused him of domestic abuse. It all came to a head after this photo of one of them surfaced. Since then, the White House has been in damage control mode, and it also can't seem to get its story straight. But the president continues to support the guy accused instead of the woman with the black eye or the other accuser. And this is his tweet just this Saturday. Quote, "People's lives are being shattered and destroyed by a mere allegation. Some are true and some are false. Some are old and some are new. There is no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career are gone. Is there no such thing any longer as due process?" And here is the president on Friday also, once again, supporting Porter.
We certainly wish him well. It's a obviously tough time for him. He also, as you probably know, he says he's innocent. And I think you have to remember that.
Now, one of Porter's ex-wives, Jenny Willoughby, she couldn't sit back and listen to what you just heard. In fact, she wrote this in Time magazine. Quote, "On Friday, a friend and I watched as the President of the United States sat in the Oval Office and praised the work of my ex-husband and wished him future success. I can't say I was surprised, but when Trump repeated twice that Rob declared his innocence, I was floored. What was his intent in emphasizing that point? My friend turned to me and said, 'The President of the United States just called you a liar.' Yes, and so we did." Now, this is typical of Trump if we've learned nothing in the past year. Here he is defending himself, Bill O'Reilly, Roy Moore, and Roger Ailes. Of course, they all have one thing in common: multiple women accusing them all of sexual harassment or worse.
Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign.
As you have seen, I am a victim of one of the great political smear campaigns in the history of our country.
I know Bill. Bill's a good person. I don't think Bill would do anything wrong.
He totally denies it. He says it didn't happen. And, you know, you have to listen to him also. I think it's so sad. He's such a great guy.
And on the Porter story, the White House handling of this mess is getting even messier as more details emerge. Washington Post said the White House counsel, okay, that's the attorney there, Donald McGahn, he knew about the allegations for a year. And Chief of Staff John Kelly learned about them last fall. The White House again today denied all that. Post also reports that they delayed Porter's security clearance amid the FBI probe, but that didn't stop the White House from hiring him once they knew this. And get this, Axios is reporting that some top White House officials actually urged Porter to stay and fight the charges. But here is White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney contradicting all that and also what the president actually said.
Someone who we know and trust and worked with, Rob Porter, came to the President of the United States and the Chief of Staff and said, look, I'm being accused of these things. They are not true. For the President or for the Chief of Staff to give that person the benefit of the doubt is probably a very normal and human reaction. If your cameraman came to you and said, look, I'm going to be accused of something, but it's not true, you'd be likely to try to want to give that person benefit of the doubt until they were proven wrong. As soon as Rob Porter was proven wrong and he was proven that he was not telling us the truth when the photos came out on Wednesday, he was gone almost immediately.
Okay, if you're confused, I've got more. Here's White House advisor Kellyanne Conway, not exactly on the same page as Mr. Mulvaney.
Well, Rob Porter no longer works at the White House. The president believes, as he said the other day, you have to consider all sides.
Okay, Chief of Staff John Kelly for his part once again at the center of the storm. Instead of putting out the fires, which is supposedly the job of the chief of staff, we already told you how he reportedly knew about those allegations against Porter several months ago, and it got even worse for the general last week. Last Tuesday, after a story was published about accusations against Porter, Kelly issued this statement, quote, "Rob Porter is a man of integrity and honor, and I can't say enough good things about him, and proud to have served alongside him." Now, a day later, after the black eye picture came about, he then turned around and said the following statement, quote, "I was shocked by the new allegations released today against Rob Porter. There is no place for domestic violence in our society." Now, don't forget, same guy who apparently knew all about this last fall and only changed his tune when he saw the photo. So earlier today, I spoke about all that with Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. Now, the New York Democrat, he's got a very unique perspective here, as he had intimate knowledge of how a White House works, as he was staff secretary for Bill Clinton. That's the same job that Porter held until recently. Congressman, you better than just about anybody understand the access that Rob Portman had to highly sensitive and classified intelligence. Give the audience an idea of just how important that information could be that you would be privy to, as well as how intense the background checks are to have that level of clearance.
Right. Well, I don't think people realize the way the White House works is that everything that goes to the president goes through the staff secretary. That's a funnel designed to protect the president from information that's not ready for his attention or that doesn't reflect all the views he needs to see, which means the Secretary of Defense or the CIA director often or the National Security Advisor does not give material directly to the president. They give it to the staff secretary, who reviews it, often writes a memo on top of it summarizing it, putting some context around it, and then it goes to the president, which means the staff secretary literally sees everything the president sees. So it is the most secret information, the highest classified information, above top secret, what they call code word classified information. There are a stack of red folders on that desk with sensitive information. There's a burn bag under the desk used to incinerate it when you're done. This is not the guy you want with a secret in his background. I did this job. The process was incredibly exacting. Everywhere I had ever lived, every person I had ever known, everything I'd ever done. And it's a crime, by the way, to lie on those forms and to lie to the FBI, which is why we need to know what his form said and what the FBI investigative report says. And that's why I've asked for an investigation.
What was your reaction when the president responded to this by defending, even sympathizing with Rob Porter, and only questioning the victim's claims? Moreover, what did you make of his concerns over an absence of quote-unquote due process?
Well, it's a sad day when the concern seems to be more for the wife beater than for the survivors of domestic abuse. In this case, you have women doing what we ask women to do. They're coming forward in a contemporaneous way. They've gone to the police. They filed protective orders. There are police records of this. There's photographic evidence, so they documented what happened to them. You know, this is what we ask victims of domestic abuse to do. They came forward in January of 2017, as I understand it, and told their stories to the FBI, which means all of this was known right off the bat, which means this guy was never going to pass a background check. You know he's disqualified. And so this notion of due process is important when you're prosecuting someone or when the allegations are unsubstantiated. But we're not talking about a criminal proceeding. We're talking about the privilege of working in one of the most sensitive jobs in the West Wing. And that's not something you have a right to. At a minimum, he should have been sidelined until they looked into it. And had they done that, they obviously would never have put him in the chair. Instead, they waited 14 months. And even after knowing about it last fall, General Kelly kicked this can down the road or swept this information under the rug. They've been all over the map on their story on this thing. We need to know what the facts are. It's a very serious thing.
So where should accountability for this fiasco rest? Well, we still don't know who knew what and when, but it certainly seems clear that General Kelly knew for a while about the Porter concerns and possibly could have even conveyed misleading information. Now, when he came on board last summer, we were to believe that he'd be the adult in the Oval Office. Are you concerned now that Kelly could actually be part of the problem?
Right. Well, John Kelly has a record of service to his country. I want to be respectful of that. But he's accountable for his actions as White House Chief of Staff. There's only two people above the Staff Secretary. That's the Chief of Staff and the President. And so John Kelly is the person we count on to make sure that when he's notified of information like this, he acts on it. Instead, he clearly did nothing. And worse, even when Rob Porter was discovered, he was defending Rob Porter, not sticking up for the victims of abuse. And more recently, we're told by the New York Times and the Washington Post that he may be enlisting other White House aides to misrepresent the actions he took. Look, it's a mess, and John Kelly has some very serious questions to answer.
Finally, is the general unrest in the White House, as well as the concerns over classified intel, a bipartisan worry? Tell us what you hear behind the scenes, because it seems, at least for us, that only Democrats, for the most part, are actually speaking out about this.
Well, look, I understand sometimes it's natural for members of the president's party to rally behind him. But, you know, my God, we have so much partisan bickering in this country. I can tell you, as someone who used to be the White House staff secretary, you need somebody in that job who's not going to be blackmailed. And when you know about facts that can lead to blackmail, you need to get that guy out of there. It's a shame it took so long. I'm glad he's gone. And I hope we can have a bipartisan look at who else at the White House has national security clearance without having passed the background check. We know a second senior advisor resigned over the last week who had similar issues of domestic violence. I mean, the president's own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has been unable to pass a background check and been cleared by the president, which the president can do, but how many others are down there? And these are the kind of questions we need answered.
Congressman, thank you so much. Coming up next, the panel joins us to discuss and debate not only the Porter controversy, but also whether it's time for General Kelly to go over his handling of this mess.